Earth's Ultimate Warning Part 1. The Patient Giant. The galaxy had watched humanity crawl into space like a child taking its first steps. 300 years ago, when human ships first broke free from their small blue world, the elder races of the Galactic Concord had studied them with great interest. They watched these strange, soft creatures build their first space stations. They watched them spread to nearby planets. They watched them reach for the stars with wonder in their eyes. And then they laughed. The Concord was home to hundreds of species, each one forged in the fire of cosmic war. The strong survived. The weak became servants or simply disappeared. This was the way of things. This was the natural order that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. Humanity arrived at the great gathering of species, not with weapons, but with gifts. They came not with demands, but with questions. They sent diplomats instead of soldiers. They offered trade instead of threats. They spoke of peace and cooperation and mutual understanding. Thought the elder races found this very amusing. "They are soft," the Velthari Dominion declared. The Velthari were tall beings with scales like polished metal and eyes that held no warmth. They had conquered 12 species in their rise to power. They will learn the truth of the universe soon enough. The Rethkari hegemony agreed. The Rethkari were ancient creatures with too many limbs and minds that thought only of expansion. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds, all of them taken by force. Let them play at diplomacy. When they have something we want, we will simply take it. And so the testing began. The Velthari struck first. A small fleet jumped into human space and attacked an outpost on a world called Kepler 442b. 14,000 human colonists lived there. Farmers and scientists and families who had traveled across the stars to build a new home. The Velthari killed them all in a single night. The galaxy waited to see what humanity would do. They expected rage. They expected a desperate, foolish attack that would give them reason to crush these newcomers completely. Instead, humanity sent diplomats. Ambassador Chen Weilin stood before the Galactic Concord, a small woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She spoke of the tragedy. She spoke of the innocent lives lost. She presented evidence of the attack and requested that the Concord take action against the Velthari. The Velthari delegate laughed in her face. The Concord did nothing. Ambassador Chen bowed politely and returned to Earth. "They are even weaker than we thought," the Rethkari leader said. "They do not even have the courage to fight." The attacks continued. Over the next 50 years, humanity suffered what their historians would later call the Long Patience. Pirates blessed by alien governments raided human ships. Trade routes were blocked. Human ambassadors were murdered on distant worlds, their deaths blamed on accidents or criminals who were never found. The Rethkari grew bold. They released an engineered virus on a human colony called New Geneva. 200,000 people died choking on their own blood. When humanity protested, the Rethkari claimed they had no knowledge of the attack. Ambassador Chen stood before the Concord again, and again, and again. 347 times she came to that great chamber and asked for justice. 347 times she was ignored or mocked or told that humanity should simply build better defenses. Through it all, Earth remained calm. They filed complaints. They imposed economic sanctions that the other races ignored. They continued to seek peaceful solutions. Behind closed doors, the Concord's intelligence services studied humanity carefully. They watched for signs of secret weapons. They looked for hidden fleets. They found nothing but more diplomats, more trade missions, more patient requests for dialogue. "They have no teeth," the reports concluded. "They are prey animals pretending to be people." What the intelligence services did not see was the quiet migration happening across human space. Slowly, so slowly that no one noticed, civilian populations were moving. Colony worlds near hostile borders were being emptied. Families were relocating to systems deep within human territory. Cities were being built underground on Earth and Luna and Mars. What they did not see were the research stations, hidden in the darkness between stars. Facilities that appeared on no map. Laboratories where scientists worked on projects, with names like Prometheus and Fenrir and Shiva. Weapons that existed only in theory were becoming real. What they did not see was humanity watching them back. Every insult, every attack, every murdered colonist was recorded and stored. Human intelligence services had spent 2 centuries building networks throughout the galaxy. They had agents everywhere, watching everything, sending information home through channels that no one knew existed. Earth's leaders met in rooms that were shielded from every form of detection. They reviewed the data. They studied their enemies. They made plans. How long? The Secretary General asked. Another century at least, her military advisor replied. We need to be certain. When we reveal ourselves, there can be no doubt about the outcome. More of our people will die. Yes, and every death will be remembered. Every crime will be answered. On the 300th anniversary of First Contact, the Rethkari hegemony made its boldest move yet. They released another virus, this one on the human colony of New Shanghai. 2 million people died in agony over the course of 3 weeks. Ambassador Chun stood before the Concorde for the 347th time. Her voice was steady. Her face showed no anger. We request, once again, that the Concorde intervene in these unprovoked attacks against humanity. The Rethkari delegate made a sound like grinding stones. It was their version of laughter. Perhaps if your species possessed adequate defenses, Ambassador, you would not need to beg. We are a peaceful people, Chun replied. We prefer dialogue. The chamber rippled with contempt. These soft creatures had learned nothing. They would never learn. Chun returned to Earth. She walked into a secure room deep beneath the surface and removed the mask of patience she had worn for 60 years. How much longer? She asked. The Rethkari are planning something big, her intelligence chief reported. Fleet movements suggest an attack on Sol itself. They want to make us a vassal state. Chun was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, harder, older. Let them come. It is time the galaxy met the real humanity. Across human space, sealed orders were opened. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war that might never come received a single message. The long patience was over. Earth's Ultimate Warning Part 2. The Mask Slip's Admiral James Okonkwo had served in the United Earth Defense Force for 40 years. In all that time, he had never fired a weapon in anger. He had never commanded a ship in actual combat. He had never watched an enemy vessel burn. This was by design. Okonkwo was not a warrior in the traditional sense. He was a planner, a theorist, a man who had spent 4 decades running simulations and war games that the public knew nothing about. His entire career had been spent preparing for a day that most humans hoped would never come. That day had arrived. He stood on the bridge of the unconquered sun, a ship that did not officially exist. Around him, his crew worked in calm silence. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every drill, every exercise, every sleepless night had led here. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the Rethkari fleet has entered the outer system. 2,000 warships. They are making no attempt to hide their approach. Why would they? Okonkwo replied. They believe we are defenseless. He thought about the reports he had read over the years. The Rethkari were ancient and proud. Their military had conquered 37 species across 5,000 years of expansion. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy they could not crush. They thought humanity was just another weak species waiting to be conquered, that they were about to learn otherwise. In secret facilities across human space, weapons systems that violated every known law of physics hummed to life. Ships that had been hiding in the dark places between stars began to move. Defense platforms that had pretended to be asteroids or debris unfolded into their true forms. Humanity had looked at the galaxy when they first arrived and seen it for what it was: a jungle, a place where the strong devoured the weak and called it natural law. A universe that respected only power. So humanity had built power. Project Prometheus had created energy weapons that could crack planets. Project Fenrir had developed ships that could move faster than anything in the known galaxy. Project Shiva had designed weapons that could end civilizations with a single strike. For 300 years, humanity had hidden these weapons. They had played the role of the peaceful species, the soft creatures who believed in diplomacy. They had let the galaxy underestimate them. Now the mask was coming off. "Open a channel to the Rethkari fleet," Okonkwo commanded. "Channel open, Admiral." Okonkwo straightened his uniform. When he spoke, his voice carried across the void of space to every ship in the approaching armada. "Rethkari fleet, you have entered sovereign human space with hostile intent. In accordance with United Earth Emergency Protocol 7, I am authorized to issue humanity's final diplomatic communication." On the Rethkari flagship, Admiral Kethrak listened with amusement. He had led the destruction of 6 species in his career. These soft humans and their diplomatic communications meant nothing to him. "You have 30 minutes to reverse course and leave our territory," Okonkwo continued. "If you do not, we will interpret your continued presence as an act of war and respond accordingly." Kethrak's mandibles clicked with laughter. "Human Admiral, you have no fleet. You have no weapons. You have nothing but words, and words have never stopped a Rethkari conquest. We will burn your world and take your people as slaves. This is the fate of the weak." Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Something cold and hard had entered it, something that made even his own crew shift uncomfortably. "For 3 centuries, we've shown you who we wish to be. You are about to meet who we have always been." He nodded to his tactical officer. Around the Rethkari fleet, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from nowhere, massive vessels bristling with weapons that the Rethkari had never seen before. The Vanguard-class dreadnoughts had been hiding in subspace pockets, technology that should have been impossible. There were hundreds of them. Kethrak's amusement died instantly. His tactical displays were going insane, trying to process what they were seeing. "Where did those come from?" "Our intelligence said." "Your intelligence," Okonkwo interrupted, "told you what we wanted you to believe." More ships appeared. Smaller vessels designed for speed and precision. Carriers holding thousands of autonomous fighters controlled by artificial minds that thought faster than light could travel. Support ships carrying weapons that could disable entire fleets without destroying them. And from the dark side of Luna, something massive began to move. It was a station. But calling it that was like calling an ocean a pond. The Prometheus platform was 20 kilometers across, a ring of metal and energy that had been built in secret over the course of a century. Its power core alone could have provided electricity to every human world for 1,000 years. That power was not meant for electricity. "Admiral Kethrak," Okonkwo said calmly, "I'm going to explain what happens next. You will listen carefully, because you will only receive this explanation once." The Rethkari Admiral said nothing. His fleet had stopped advancing. His crews were sending panicked reports about weapon signatures that did not match anything in their databases. "Our weapons will disable your ships. Not destroy them. Disable. Your crews will be captured, given medical treatment, and returned to your borders." We are not going to slaughter you, even though you came here to slaughter us. Do you understand why? Kethrak still could not speak. His entire understanding of the galaxy was crumbling. Because we are not you, Okonkwo continued. We never were. You looked at our patience and saw weakness. You looked at our mercy and saw cowardice. You were wrong. We were never the prey. We were the predator who chose not to hunt. He leaned forward. Until you came to our den. The first shots were fired. Kinetic rounds moving at 80% of the speed of light. Too fast for any defense system to track. They struck Rethkari engines with surgical precision, disabling ships without killing crews. The Battle of Seoul had begun. Kethrak watched his fleet die around him and understood. Finally, what humanity truly was. They were not soft. They were patient, and their patience had just run out. Earth's Ultimate Warning Part 3. The wolves emerged. The Battle of Seoul lasted 11 minutes. Across the galaxy, military analysts would study those 11 minutes for centuries. They would write books about them. They would build simulations trying to understand how 2,000 warships from one of the most powerful empires in known space had been completely defeated in less time than it took to eat breakfast. Answer was simple and terrifying. Humanity had not just been building weapons. They had been building something far more dangerous. They had been building certainty. The Rethkari fleet had the finest military technology that 5,000 years of conquest could produce. Their ships were fast and deadly. Their weapons could glass plants. Their commanders had never lost a war. None of it mattered. Human, kinetic rounds moved at speeds that Rethkari sensors could not track. By the time their computers detected an incoming projectile, the projectile had already passed through their ship. Human AI systems controlled the battle with processing speeds that made organic thought seem frozen in time. Every shot was calculated. Every target was selected. Every outcome was predetermined. In the first minute, the Rethkari lost their engines. Precise strikes disabled their propulsion systems without breaching their hulls. Ships that had been charging toward Earth suddenly found themselves drifting helplessly in the void. In the second minute, they lost their weapons. Human fighters swarmed through the fleet like angry insects, their movements coordinated by minds that could make 1,000 decisions in the time it took a Rethkari gunner to blink. Main cannons went dark. Missile tubes were sealed. Point defense systems powered down as control systems were overwritten by intrusion programs that had been planted in Rethkari software decades ago. In the third minute, they lost their communications. Every ship in the fleet was suddenly alone, unable to coordinate, unable to call for help, unable to do anything but watch as human vessels moved through them like wolves among sheep. Admiral Kethrak sat on his bridge in stunned silence. His flagship, the Pride of Conquest, was the most advanced warship in the hegemony. It had destroyed entire fleets. It had broken species. Now it floated dead in space, its systems dark, while a human ship smaller than his personal shuttle held position off his bow. Admiral Kethrak, the human commander's voice, came through on emergency channels, the only system they had left working. Your fleet has been disabled. If your crews remain calm and make no attempts to restart weapon systems, no one needs to die today. Kethrak finally found his voice. How? Our intelligence. Your intelligence told you what we wanted you to know. We have been inside your networks since first contact. We have read every report. We have watched every strategy session. We have known about this attack since before your shipyards began building the fleet to carry it out. The human paused. You never had a chance. You were never going to win. The only question was whether you would force us to kill you, or whether we could end this without bloodshed. Across the disabled fleet, Rethkari crews sat in darkness and tried to understand what had happened. They were warriors from a proud race. They had conquered worlds. They had never been defeated. and now they had lost everything in 11 minutes. On Earth, people gathered in the streets and watched the sky. They knew something was happening. Emergency alerts had told them to remain calm, that the situation was under control. Now they saw lights in the darkness above, the distant flashes of a battle that had already ended. Admiral Okonkwo surveyed his tactical display and allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. Not a single human ship had been damaged. Not a single human life had been lost. The technology gap between humanity and the Rethkari had been so vast that it was not really a battle at all, Dodd. It was a demonstration. "Begin collection operations," he ordered. "I want every Rethkari crew member recovered and processed. Medical treatment for any wounded. Full rations and proper quarters for all prisoners. We will show them the mercy they never showed us." His officers moved to obey. Around the disabled fleet, transport ships began the work of gathering the survivors. News of the battle spread across the galaxy at the speed of terror. The Rethkari had attacked humanity with 2,000 warships. Humanity had defeated them in 11 minutes without losing a single vessel, without losing a single life. The Velthari Dominion received the report in their War Council chamber. The Supreme Commander, a scarred veteran of 100 campaigns, watched the footage 7 times before speaking. "They were never weak," he whispered. "They were waiting. They let us attack them. They let us kill their people. They watched us and studied us and pretended to be helpless while they built weapons we cannot even understand." His officers said nothing. They were all thinking the same thing. For what purpose? One finally asked, "Why hide their strength? Why let us believe they were prey?" The Supreme Commander's scales had gone pale. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "To see if we deserve to live." The Galactic Concord called an emergency session. Species that had laughed at humanity for 300 years now gathered in fear. They had all participated in the abuse of these soft creatures. They had all attacked human ships or blocked human trade or murdered human citizens. And now those soft creatures had revealed themselves to be something else entirely. Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin received the summons to address the Concord. She read it with a small smile. "They want to talk now," she said to Admiral Okonkwo over a secure channel. "Strange how defeat makes them interested in dialogue. What will you tell them?" Chen's smile faded. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of accumulated patience and 3 centuries of accumulated anger. "The truth. For the first time, I am going to tell them the truth." She straightened her uniform and prepared to face the galaxy. The wolves had emerged. Now, it was time to explain the new rules. Earth's Ultimate Warning, Part 4. The Reckoning. The message arrived in every capital world in the Galactic Concord at exactly the same moment. It appeared on government screens and public displays and personal devices. Every species in known space heard it at once. Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin stood in a simple room with a plain background. Behind her, a holographic display showed stars. Her voice was calm and clear, the same voice she had used for 347 diplomatic protests. But the words were different. For 300 years, humanity sought peace. We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We found instead a galaxy that believed only in power, that saw kindness as weakness and patience as cowardice. The display behind her changed. Now it showed images. Human colonies burning. Bodies in the streets of New Geneva. The empty ruins of Kepler 442b. We absorbed your attacks. We buried our dead. We filed our protests and asked for justice and believed that someday you might choose to be better than you were. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened. We were wrong. Not about peace. Peace remains our deepest wish. We were wrong about what you would respond to. You do not understand kindness. You do not respect restraint. For 300 years, you interpreted our mercy as weakness and our patience as cowardice. The display shifted again. Now it showed the human fleet. Ships beyond counting. Weapons that glowed with energies that alien scientists could not identify. The massive ring of the Prometheus platform hanging in orbit around Earth like a crown of steel and fire. So let us be clear. Chun leaned forward. Her voice remained steady, but now it carried weight. Now it carried threat. The United Earth government is issuing a single warning to every species that has participated in hostilities against humanity. This warning will not be repeated. This warning will not be negotiated. This warning is final. She paused. Cease your assaults. Return our captured citizens. Make reparations for the lives you have taken. Accept responsibility for your crimes. Another pause. Longer this time, or we will cease feigning civility. The message ended. Across the galaxy, governments scrambled to respond. Military commanders demanded information about human capabilities. Intelligence agencies searched desperately for data they should have gathered centuries ago. The Rethkari hegemony responded first. Despite the loss of their fleet, their leaders could not accept what had happened. Their pride would not let them. Humanity will pay for this insult, the hegemony broadcast to the Concord. We will gather every ship in our empire. We will call upon our allies. We will crush these creatures and erase their worlds from the stars. The message was bold. It was defiant. It lasted 20 minutes. Then every military system in the Rethkari hegemony went dark. On every world, on every ship, on every station, Rethkari technology simply stopped working. Defense grids went offline. Communication networks failed. Ship engines refused to start. Even basic life support systems flickered warnings before backup power activated. The hegemony's high command gathered in their emergency bunker, one of the few places still functioning, and stared at reports they could not understand. How is this possible? The supreme leader demanded. Our systems are protected. Our networks are secure. How did they do this? A human message appeared on their screens. It was not Ambassador Chun this time. It was Admiral Okonkwo. We have been inside your system since first contact, he said simply. Every military code, every government secret, every classified project. We have watched you for 300 years. We know where your leaders sleep. We know where your weapons are stored. We know everything. He let that sink in. Your fleet and soul system was not defeated because we were stronger. It was defeated because we knew exactly what you were going to do before you did it. Every tactic, every maneuver, every contingency plan. We read them all. The Rethkari leaders sat in stunned silence. You have 1 hour to broadcast your surrender. If you do not, we will shut down your systems permanently. Not just your military, everything. Your cities will go dark. Your food production will stop. Your people will die by the billions, not because we attacked them, but because you were too proud to accept defeat. The message ended. The Rethkari surrendered in 43 minutes. One by one, the other hostile powers followed. The Velthari Dominion discovered that human agents had been serving in their government for 2 centuries. The Kev Confederacy learned that the trade networks they depended on were secretly controlled by human corporations. The Morth Alliance found out that the weapons they had, bought from third parties, were designed by human engineers and contained hidden systems that could disable them at any time. Earth had not just built a military. They had built a web. For 300 years, while the galaxy laughed at their weakness, humanity had been slowly wrapping threads around every hostile power. Those threads had now become chains. Ambassador Chun stood before the Galactic Concord one final time. The chamber that had once rippled with contempt was now silent with fear. "We did not want this," she said. "For 300 years, we wanted nothing more than to be your friends. We wanted to trade with you and learn from you and build something beautiful together. You chose a different path. You chose to hurt us. You chose to kill us. You chose to treat us as prey." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of delegates from species that had participated in humanity's suffering. "Now you will face the consequences of those choices. Not genocide, not slavery, not the destruction you planned for us. You will face justice, real justice, the kind we offered from the beginning, if only you had been willing to accept it." She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Consider yourselves fortunate. We have decided to be better than you were. We have decided to show you the mercy you never showed us." Her smile faded. "But remember this. Remember it every day for the rest of your civilization's existence. We chose mercy. We can choose differently. The reckoning had come, and humanity had proved itself more terrifying in victory than anyone had imagined possible in defeat." Earth's Ultimate Warning Part 5. The New Dawn. The Treaty of Seoul was signed 1 year after humanity revealed its true strength. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Concord gathered on Earth, in a building that had been constructed specifically for this moment. They came expecting harsh terms. They came expecting punishment. What they received confused them entirely. Humanity asked for no territory. They claimed no worlds beyond what they already held. They demanded no tribute, no slaves, no resources. They did not place governors over defeated species or demand changes to their governments. The treaty required only 3 things. Return all human prisoners. Acknowledge the crimes committed against humanity over 3 centuries. Promise to never attack human space again. That was all. The Volturi ambassador was the first to question this. He stood in his embassy on Earth, looking out at a city that could have been reduced to ash by the weapons humanity possessed. And he could not understand. "You could rule the galaxy," he said to Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin. "Your weapons are beyond anything we can match. Your intelligence networks have penetrated every government. Your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Nothing could stop you from building an empire greater than any that has ever existed." Chan smiled. It was a different smile than the one she had worn before the Concord. That had been cold and hard. This was warm, genuine. "Why would we want an empire?" she asked. The ambassador had no answer. In his experience, power existed to be used. Strength existed to conquer. The idea that a species would choose not to dominate when they had the ability confused him completely. "I will tell you a secret," Chan said. "Something that your intelligence services never discovered. Something we have hidden even more carefully than our weapons." She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Humans walked the streets alongside aliens for the first time. Children pointed at strange beings and asked questions. Adults shook hands with creatures from other worlds, tentative but curious. "We are afraid," Chun said quietly. The ambassador thought he had misheard. "Afraid? Of what?" "You have defeated every enemy you faced." "We are afraid of ourselves." She turned to face him. "Humans are capable of terrible things. Our history is filled with war and cruelty and destruction. We have committed atrocities against each other that would horrify even the Rethkari. When we first looked at the stars, we hoped to leave that darkness behind. We hoped to become something better." She gestured at the city. "That is why we chose patience. For 300 years, we could have fought back. We could have used our weapons. We could have shown the galaxy what humanity can do when it stops holding itself back. But if we had done that, we would have become the very thing we were trying to escape." The ambassador listened in silence. "The weapons, the fleets, the intelligence networks, those are what we built because we had to. Because we knew that someday someone would come to destroy us, and we needed to be ready. But conquest? Empire? That has never been our dream. She smiled again. We wanted neighbors, friends, a galaxy where our children could explore without fear. We showed you our teeth because you would not listen to our words. But the teeth were never the point. The ambassador thought about this for a long time. Finally, he asked a question that had haunted every species in the Concord since the Battle of Sol. And if someone threatens you again? If another species decides that humanity must be destroyed? Chen's smile did not waver, but something flickered behind her eyes. Something old and patient and utterly without mercy. The ambassador recognized it. He had seen it in the eyes of the deadliest predators his species had ever encountered. Then we will remind them why they stopped. The words were simple. The threat was absolute. 20 years passed. The galaxy changed. Human traders traveled to every corner of known space, bringing goods and ideas and something else that spread faster than any technology. A philosophy. A way of thinking that suggested strength and kindness were not opposites. That mercy could be more powerful than violence. That the greatest civilizations were built not by conquest, but by cooperation. Not everyone accepted this. Old hatreds died slowly. Some species still whispered that humanity was simply biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. But more and more, the galaxy began to change. Species that had warred for millennia signed peace treaties. Trade replaced tribute. Diplomacy replaced threats. The Rethkari hegemony, humbled but not destroyed, slowly transformed into something their ancestors would not have recognized. A new generation grew up knowing that conquest led only to defeat. They built their first university. They sent their first ambassadors. They took their first steps toward becoming the neighbors that humanity had always wanted. On Earth, Admiral Okonkwo retired to a small house by the sea. He spent his days fishing and watching the waves and thinking about the war that never was. Sometimes young officers would visit him, wanting to hear about the Battle of Sol. He would tell them the story, and then he would tell them something else. We built weapons that could destroy the galaxy, he would say, and then we chose not to use them. That choice was harder than any battle. It was harder than any war, but it was the only choice that mattered. Ambassador Jen Wei-Lin remained in service for another 30 years. She watched the galaxy transform. She saw species that had once been enemies become trading partners. She watched the children of those who had attacked humanity grow up to study on Earth and fall in love with humans and build lives that bridged the gap between stars. On the 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Sol, she gave her final speech before retiring. She stood in the same chamber where she had once begged for justice from a galaxy that would not listen. Now that chamber was filled with delegates who had come to celebrate peace. "We showed you both faces of humanity," she said. "The patient diplomat and the waiting wolf. The hand extended in friendship and the fist that could crush worlds. We hoped you would respond to the first. We prepared for the possibility that you would only understand the second." She looked around the room at faces that had become familiar over decades of work. You chose fear. And then, slowly, you chose something else. You chose to believe that perhaps there was another way. That perhaps strength could be gentle. That perhaps the predator who chose not to hunt was more worthy of respect than the one who could not help itself. She smiled one last time. That is the truth of humanity. We are capable of terrible things. We are also capable of beautiful ones. Every day, we choose which we will be. And every day, so do you. The chamber erupted in applause from 100 different species. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. Human ships traveled beside alien vessels, exploring the universe together. Children of a dozen worlds played games that mixed traditions from across the galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, The weapons that humanity had built sat silent and waiting. A reminder of what could have been. A warning of what might still be. If the galaxy ever forgot the lesson it had learned, the wolf had shown its teeth. The galaxy had learned to be grateful for the hand. And across 1,000 worlds, a new dawn was breaking.